Good day, dear students. My name is Blessing. I am a psychology student of the University of Lagos, and we will be discussing cognitive psychology. Cognitive psychology is a 200 level course in the Department of Psychology. This is the first class and it is the introductory part. Today, we will be discussing Introduction to Cognitive Psychology. In today's class, we would focus on the definition and scope of cognitive psychology, the historical background and key figures in cognitive psychology, and the importance of cognitive psychology in understanding behavior. These are the three subtopics we'll be treating today, and I hope that by the end of today's class, you would understand what cognitive psychology is all about. As a result, you would be able to flow with the rest of the topics we'll be treating in this course. Now we move to the introduction. Cognitive psychology is a branch of psychology that focuses on studying mental processes like perception, memory, decision making, and reasoning. It investigates how people understand, diagnose, and respond to various stimuli in their environment. And it seeks to understand how people process information and how this processing influences their behavior. To explain further, cognitive psychology is a course that deals with studying mental processes. Mental processes are like internal cognitive functions that occur within our minds. Perception, memory, problem solving, decision making, reasoning, all these mental processes occur within our minds. Cognitive psychology deals with studying these mental processes. Cognitive psychology also investigates how we understand, diagnose, and respond to various stimuli in our environments. We get various sensory information from our environment. Cognitive psychology investigates how we understand the information we get from our environment, how we interpret them, how we respond to them, the corresponding feedback we give for the information we get from our environment. Cognitive psychology also seeks to understand how we process information and how this processing influences our behavior. Like I said, we get different information from our environment, and because as humans we are different, we process this information in different ways. Cognitive psychology seeks to understand how we process the information we get and how this processing influences the feedback we give or the behavior that we exhibit. We move to the scopes of cognitive psychology. These scopes are the area of coverage of cognitive psychology. They are contexts where cognitive psychology can be applied. The first is memory. Cognitive psychology aims to understand how information is encoded, stored, and retrieved. Like I said earlier, we get various information from our environment. So cognitive psychology aims to understand how we encode the information we get, how we store them, and how we retrieve them when we need them. The next is attention. Cognitive psychology investigates how and why we focus on certain stimuli over others. Have you ever wondered why you are in a marketplace and you focus on the person you're speaking with? You do not mind the noise around you. Yes, markets are usually very noisy. So you don't mind the noise around you or other people speaking around you. You focus on the vendor or the market woman you are speaking with. That is what attention is all about. So cognitive psychology aims to investigate how and why we focus on certain information, certain stimuli, and neglect others. The next is perception. Cognitive psychology aims to explore or explores how we interpret sensory information to form our understanding of the world. Humans are different. Every human has a different personality. We are different in our own ways. So we interpret sensory information differently. Cognitive psychology explores how we interpret the sensory information we get from our surroundings and how this interpretation forms our understanding of our world. The next is language. Cognitive psychology studies how we acquire, comprehend, and produce language. And the last is problem solving and decision making. Cognitive psychology analyzes the cognitive processes involved in identifying problems, generating solutions, and making choices. Every day, we are faced with different responsibilities, different challenges, different tasks. So, cognitive processes are actually involved in our decision making and our problem solving. Cognitive psychology analyzes these cognitive processes involved in how we identify problems around us, how we create solutions, and how we make choices. The next on the slide is the historical background of cognitive psychology. Everything has a beginning. So cognitive psychology also began due to some reasons. Cognitive psychology emerged in the mid-20th century as a reaction against behaviorism, which dominated psychology at that time. While behaviorism focused on observable behaviors and dismissed internal mental processes as unmeasurable and irrelevant, cognitive psychology emphasized the importance of studying the mind and recognizing that mental processes could be studied scientifically. Before cognitive psychology emerged, we had a school of thought in psychology then. They are known as the behaviorists. We have people like Ivan Pavlov. No, Ivan Pavlov was a physiologist. So we have different behaviorists. Behaviorists like John Watson. As at that time, they believed that we should only focus on observable behaviors and dismiss internal mental processes. Cognitive psychology emerged to stand against this belief and to show us that these internal cognitive functions are very important. They emphasized the importance of studying the mind and recognizing that mental processes could be studied scientifically. Unfortunately, cognitive psychology grew, and there are noticeable things that happened in the development of cognitive psychology. In the 1950s to the 1960s, the information processing model was developed. Now, the information processing model likens the human mind to a computer. This information processing model stands that or posits that the human mind can process information and produce outputs. The output produced is the behavior. A computer has the ability, or a computer is made to process input and produce output. The information processing model posits that the human mind, just like a computer, can process information gotten from the environment to produce behavior. Now, influential research. Studies on cognitive development by Jean Piaget, language acquisition by Noam Chomsky, and experiments on memory and perception. These people I just mentioned were notable people who Jean Piaget and Noam Chomsky are notable people who influenced cognitive psychology. Jean Piaget made a theory or postulated a theory on cognitive development in children, and Noam Chomsky is well known for his theories on language acquisition. Cognitive revolution. This era saw a shift in focus to internal mental states, leading to a multidisciplinary approach that included neuroscience, linguistics, and artificial intelligence. We move to the key figures in cognitive psychology. Many people influenced cognitive psychology, but those who we are going to talk about today had those who made notable impacts in cognitive psychology. The first is Ulrich Neisser. He is often considered the father of cognitive psychology. He wrote on cognitive psychology in 1967, which helped to define and formalize the field. Jean Piaget. He is known for his theory on cognitive development in children, which has had a lasting impact on education and developmental psychology. Noam Chomsky. His theories on language acquisition challenged behavioral models and reinforced the idea of innate cognitive structures. Herbert A. Simon. He is a pioneer in cognitive science, and Simon contributed to understanding problem solving and decision processes. Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. Their work on judgment and decision making highlighted cognitive biases and heuristics. Please ensure that you remember these notable figures and their contributions to the development of cognitive psychology. I would also advise that you read more on their contributions towards cognitive psychology. The next is the importance of cognitive psychology in understanding behavior. I said earlier that cognitive psychology seeks to understand how we process information and how this processing influences our behavior. Cognitive psychology is very important so that we are able to understand how mental processes affect our behavior, how perception, memory, decision making affects the behavior that we portray or the feedback we give to our environment. Cognitive psychology plays a crucial role in understanding behavior in several ways. The first is understanding mental processes. By studying how people think and process information, cognitive psychology helps explain why individuals may behave in certain ways based on their cognition. The next is application across domains. The principles of cognitive psychology are applied in various fields, including education, therapy, artificial intelligence, organizational behavior, and human-computer interaction. The principles of cognitive psychology are used in other fields, education, in businesses, to enhance learning and productivity. Mental health. Cognitive behavioral therapy, also known as CBT, integrates cognitive psychology principles, and it is an effective treatment for various psychological disorders, focusing on changing negative thought patterns. Cognitive behavioral therapy makes use of principles in cognitive psychology to treat various psychological disorders, enhancing mental health, enhancing learning and memory. Insights from cognitive psychology can improve educational practices and strategies, leading to better retention and understanding of information. So, like I said earlier, principles of cognitive psychology are used in education to enhance learning, to enhance memory. The next is understanding decision making. Cognitive psychology provides frameworks for understanding how decisions are made, which can inform economics, marketing, and public policies. Now, we have come to the end of today's class. So I would reiterate all that I have said to ensure that you understand all that we discussed today. We discussed the definition of cognitive psychology, how it studies mental processes, how it investigates how people understand, diagnose, and respond to various information they get from their environment, how we process this information, and how the processing influences our behavior. We also discussed the scopes of cognitive psychology: memory, attention, perception, language, problem solving, and decision making. We discussed the historical background, how cognitive psychology came to stand against the opinion of the behaviorists, emphasizing that it is important we study the mind. It is important that we do not dismiss internal mental processes, internal cognitive functions, and that we should recognize that mental processes could be studied scientifically. We also discussed key milestones in the development of cognitive psychology, how the information processing model posits that the human mind can be likened to a computer, how influential research also came about, different experiments, different research by different people. I also discussed how people began to see that, it is important that we understand internal mental states, and how cognitive psychology was used in different areas, and how cognitive psychology also drew ideas from different fields. We discussed how people began to see the need to study internal mental states, leading to the acquisition of cognitive principles into different fields like neuroscience, linguistics, and artificial intelligence. We also discussed key figures in cognitive psychology: Ulrich Neisser, who is often considered the father of psychology; Jean Piaget, Noam Chomsky, Herbert A. Simon, Daniel Kahneman, and Amos Tversky. We discussed the importance of cognitive psychology in understanding behavior, in understanding mental processes, how cognitive psychology is applied across different fields, how cognitive psychology is applied in mental health, how principles of cognitive psychology enhance learning and memory, and how cognitive psychology helps us to understand decision making. The last slide is a quick test to help you evaluate how much you understand all that we talked about today. The first question is, what is the primary focus of cognitive psychology? Remember, we talked about the definition of cognitive psychology and what it deals with. What is the primary focus of cognitive psychology? I hope you remember. The second question is, what are the scopes of cognitive psychology? I hope you remember the scopes. We talked about them earlier today. The third question is, who is considered the father of cognitive psychology? Do you remember who that is? The fourth question is, Noam Chomsky's contribution to cognitive psychology focuses on what? Remember, we talked about Noam Chomsky and his contribution towards cognitive psychology. And the fifth question is, cognitive psychology focuses on teaching methods only. True or false? If you are able to answer these questions, that is to show that you've followed through this lecture and you understand all that we talked about. And if not, no worries, you can always go back and listen to all that we discussed so that you'll be able to answer these questions effectively. I hope that you learned a lot today, and remember to go back to what we have discussed and study, because repetition begets perfection. Thank you very much for listening. See you in the next class.